Hey guys, and welcome to Tantrum House Studio 3. Today we are hanging out doing a tantrum talk, and we're talking about Kickstarter, whether it's good for the industry and or bad. So we'd love to hear your opinions on it as well. We've got some ideas and concepts of our own, but tune in, give us your thoughts in the comments, and we will be ready to party in just a couple seconds. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor for our Tantrum Talks, Academy Games. They've got some fantastic games that you guys need to check out. So do that, and in just a second, we'll be back and ready to go. All right, see you in a few.
Yep.
We're back. Woohoo! Will is coming. He's stuck over there in the corner. But we are
people.
We are excited about talking to you all about Kickstarter. Not only our Kickstarter, because our Kickstarter is still live.
It is.
It's
So
just
check it out.
I know, just a few hours left. We should put like a link in the description or something. I don't know. We can do that later. But we really want to just take a few minutes today and discuss what Kickstarter has been doing here, and just how long it's been around. And I know thousands of projects have been funded on Kickstarter, but specifically how it relates to the board game industry. So let me just give you a few facts.
So it's been around for about 10 years, right?
Yeah, 10 years, which is quite a long time, really, if you think about it.
In the digital world, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Since 2009, there's in 2018, which was last year, $165 million was successfully raised. So that's a lot of money.
For board games or just on Kickstarter?
For board games.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
And that was almost a 20% increase from 2017 to 2018. And out of that, that means 2,337 were tabletop projects that were successful. So
more than 2,000 tabletop projects
Yes.
funded in 2018?
yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of games.
So well, I don't know if you divide that by a month, but if you take 2,337 divided by 12, that
It's a lot.
Gives you another number. I'm sure Ryan can figure it out sometime.
In his head.
But Will's here.
Hey, I'm back.
So, and one more little fact just about Kickstarter is, on average, a Kickstarter project has a 37% chance of funding. So if you think about 37% chance. So if you think about 2,300-ish Kickstarters were successful, and that's only about 37. Maybe tabletop projects may have a little bit better chance of funding, but I did a little bit of math, not too much better, maybe 38, 39%. There's still a lot more projects being
Created.
Or
brainstormed.
Yeah, being brainstormed, at least being brought to Kickstarter.
Yeah, so campaigns.
Yeah.
So there was way more than 2,000 board game campaigns in
Yeah, that's what I'm
2018
saying.
is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Wow.
34%.
That's a lot.
Funded. Something like that. Whatever you said.
I think it's 37%.
But,
37%.
yeah, that's a whole bunch
That's
of
just
mathy stuff.
That's all just cool stuff about Kickstarter, but we really wanted to talk to you all about Kickstarter, whether it's good or whether it's bad for the industry. And we were talking a little bit about this, and Melissa had a little bit of just thoughts before we started.
Oh, well, I mean, there are a couple different perspectives because publishers are using Kickstarter, so they may have one perspective about what's good and bad. But then there's also the consumers, so the people who are pledging, and they have their opinions on what they like and don't like. And then I think, Ryan, you had thought of another one.
Yeah, so there's also the friendly local game store.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
They're a type of consumer, but they're not the end consumer. So what does Kickstarter mean for them?
And I think there's some of the, unsung heroes or underdogs. I don't know what the proper term is for that. I do feel, and I appreciate this a lot, I see in the industry a lot of people defending the friendly local game stores, and I think a good portion of the audience recognizes how valuable they are to the hobby in general. And I always appreciate when people stand up for them. They're like, we gotta, visit them and make sure we don't mess them up with the Kickstarting
And you have
model.
Yeah, because you have different audiences. You have people who are not going to Kickstarter, so they're just seeing games at their friendly local game store. They might even get games even online. And then you have people who are just on Kickstarter, but then you have people who are on Kickstarter online and they're at their friendly local game store, which is probably more of the diehards.
Maybe, yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think one of the things that well, for example, and this is going to be one of the things that I talk about in general about Kickstarter, is that I feel like it has generated new venues and outlets for business that never existed. One of those things are things like the Game Steward, which kind of comes in as a friendly local game store for the internet. I don't know what to even really call them, but they take games that have been funded on Kickstarter and they give them a second platform, basically, to where if they aren't going to make it into retail stores, there's still another option for people to purchase from. That whole company and those types of companies wouldn't even exist without Kickstarter.
Yeah, and there's all the pledge managers and fulfillment.
That's true, yeah.
That's
yeah,
another good
Crowdox
example.
and other things. So yeah, Kickstarter has actually launched other businesses and platforms.
Well, and in truth, like it really, I think, launched us, and that's really one of the big angles that I would want to approach the Kickstarter, is it good or is it bad thing from, because I think, like, Kickstarter is supposed to be this platform where you bring your ideas, whatever they are, and you create something, and people help you, and it turns into something awesome. And I think there have been a number of great inventions that have come from that, and not only, like, I think there are some inventions that probably would never have existed without Kickstarter. And I think there are a lot of board games that never would have existed.
Oh, sure.
And anecdotally, like, that's where I would come from, because, like, I had a game idea when I was, 19, 20. We were playing it. I started designing my own versions of it. I even printed up, like, 3 versions to give to friends. And if Kickstarter didn't exist, that would have been the end of it. Like, we would have just played Scum, Steam Court, and we would have had fun with it, and it would have been, like, our little secret niche thing. But because Kickstarter existed, whether I actually ever had success with it or not, like, I decided, let's give it a shot. Let's try to turn it into something bigger. And you look at other people that have done that, people like Stegmeyer, which I'm sure he'll come up throughout our conversation a lot. And I wonder, like, if Kickstarter didn't exist, would he be where he's at? And he probably could have taken his ideas and gone to a publisher and had them published. But I think there's something about just the mental idea that Kickstarter is this magical place where my ideas could come to life that didn't exist before that. And I think, like, the revolution, the boom of the board gaming hobby, I would give credit to Kickstarter, because it gave people who just had an idea and that was it.
Yeah.
It gave them a way to make something.
And we have lots of comments coming in.
Okay, good. What are they
So,
saying?
like,
So,
Will's
I'll
rambling
take
on.
that. Yeah, so Peter's question about, do we have a pledge manager for our Kickstarter campaign that is currently live? That would be me. I will be the pledge manager.
Sarah is our, like Steph said, our personal
Yeah.
pledge manager.
So if you miss adding on anything, we'll have this in the final update and in the survey.
Yeah.
If you missed something and wanted to add it on, we are more than willing to add on if we have availability of items.
Yeah.
And you'll
But
be able
they
to
can't-
email me personally.
But
do
they
it
can't change their pledge.
Yeah, you
in
won't be able to
Kickstarter.
change your pledge
Yeah.
and add. You won't be able to add things
Sure.
on through a pledge manager. You will be able to do it with us personally.
Which
Yeah.
is way better customer service. And, yeah, we in the past, like when we did Steam Court, we thought, we'll see what happens. Like, if we get 10 million backers, then we'll have the money to go do a pledge manager type of thing. And that didn't happen, which is great. And we were able to fulfill it all ourselves. And then that's just kind of been our model each year. This is the first year where we've gone from having like 200 backers to 6 times that or whatever. I don't know how many we have.
You're not good with numbers. We have
I'm not.
300.
Tell me
We
those
have
numbers.
300, and now we're at about 750,
Yeah, we're probably-
725.
Yeah.
So we'll see what level of management that requires. That next year we might be in a different boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so far I think we'll be able to handle everything. I've already gone through and looked at about what all the pledges are. A lot of them are bundles, which should be easy to take care of, and
Yeah.
that'll all be on an individual basis
Yes.
anyway. So
Our first question about our topic here, about the Kickstarter being good or bad, about the current suspensions that are on Kickstarter. You may have heard that a couple companies have been suspended on Kickstarter, Colossal Games and Maple Games. We will maybe talk about them a little bit, but just real quick, since no
official.
Yeah, there's been absolutely no communication by Kickstarter themselves as to why anything happened or any of the backside. They haven't been able to be contacted. I'm guessing because it's the weekend.
Yeah.
Nobody, I'm sure there are people
Easter
at the
weekend on top of that.
Yeah,
so it's not just normal Saturday.
It's the weekend, so the managers and people who probably will be making decisions on it are not in the office. So I'm guessing we'll have to wait till Monday.
But real quick, I mean, there are rules on Kickstarter, and like people have brought up multiple campaigns. They brought up, there's multiple. There's a
relationship
between and even multiple accounts. So there's lots of different reasons why. We just don't know what the specific reason why Kickstarter decided, and it may not just be one reason. It could be multiple reasons.
And we don't want to speculate, but I'm just kidding. We really don't. I think there's not a whole lot of information to work from other than those types of things. Like they've said it. So it is interesting. Ryan and I were talking about this. Like, if board games are they the number one funded thing on Kickstarter? Or number two? Or number three?
It's way up there. It's way up there.
It seems like the people like Kickstarter should have thought through this a little bit more. What were you?
I was saying, if you're going to do such a big thing with such a big company, you would think you would do it very deliberately and communicate. And maybe Kickstarter did communicate with them and we just don't know, but that communication has not trickled down to the public.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we just don't want to speculate too much. Where we don't want to start any rumors or anything. Hopefully, it can be sorted out.
But you heard it here first.
Hopefully, it can be sorted out soon, and it's not too damaging to the companies and even the designers. And there's so many people involved in a project, not just Colossal Games or Maple Games. It trickles to many other people, and hopefully, it can all get worked out.
Yeah. Another good thing that Peter brought up was not good, but the Solar Cities production that's another reason that Kickstarter could be negative for some people, because there are games that are brought to Kickstarter that are never fulfilled. So that's bad from a consumer standpoint, because you are spending money and you're never seeing the fulfillment of that.
Well, and in truth, that would be bad for the producer and for the game stores as well. So every perspective is
for
bad
every
on that one. And I guess that the risk is, like, if it becomes too easy, if it looks too easy to make a game, there is like and I think we definitely ran into that, and I think most first-time Kickstarter runners run into that, where it's like, you just make it look good and you post it, and then like, oh, international tariffs and taxes and shipping and manufacturing, like all these other things come in, especially for first-time creators that you have no idea you're going to get into. It is very easy to go into it a little bit naive.
Yeah, like the Meeple report is saying, and it looks like they did give some reasons in the to the backers that it definitely could be multiple reasons.
Right,
So.
I think that's their standard list. It wasn't specific to why they shut that down. Just hey, Kickstarter may suspend a project because of these things.
But going back to the campaign page and just like, here's what the game is, Melissa and I were talking about a campaign page and how maybe a Kickstarter game compares to a board game going through distribution. Did you want to?
Oh, I was saying one of the good things about Kickstarter for consumers is there is so much information on that page, if it's done well, that you just go to that one spot and you can see previews, reviews, you can download the rule book sometimes. You see so much of what the game will be, hopefully. Whereas if you're just in a game store, you're looking at a box, or you have to go research a game in many different websites and BGG and stuff like that. Whereas with the Kickstarter, it's all there, and hopefully people can make more informed decisions, at least about the type of game, if it's something that they may want.
Yeah, and some campaigns even have a free print and play that you can try the game out yourself before you even back it.
I know sometimes as consumers we see a board game and they're hot on the market, and we see a few people have them, or maybe they're coming soon, and for a non-Kickstarter board game, you really don't have that much information. You might go to the Board Game Geek website, you might look at the publisher's page, and there's literally, here's the game, and here's what maybe the board game mechanic is. You might know the number of players. They might tell you what the game time is, the gameplay time is. But there's really, and maybe like a little flavor text, but there's really not that much you can hear about the game. So I think that's one of the good things about Kickstarter, like Melissa was saying.
Yeah, and someone just said that you can like contact the producer you feel a little bit closer to the creator of the project because they're there and they're answering comments and there may be a little bit more humanity to it. But for the creators, I think that can also potentially be a bad thing because I think we've all seen some Kickstarter campaigns where some of the backers aren't very respectful and
Yes.
it gets toxic potentially. So as if I were a creator, I think that would be the most stressful thing for me is dealing with everyone's different opinions. And the opinions aren't one backer wants A,
Right.
one backer wants B, one backer wants C. You can't please everybody.
Yeah, there is potential for that, and we've definitely seen that in places, which is unfortunate. It's too bad everybody can't be friendly and nice all the time. But I do understand when people want, like, they have a very real expectation, and then trying to them it seems fair. They may not communicate it well, but you run into those issues for sure.
I think that's another good point AK had there. Maybe ratings for companies.
Ooh.
That's not a bad. It's not a bad idea. I don't know. He
Like
would.
Better Business Bureau
Yeah,
type thing.
I don't.
Were you just talking about
We
something
just
like that?
Oh yeah, a certified non-evil that you can
Google.
give to companies.
Yeah, you'd have to figure out like who's actually figuring that stuff out. I mean, that's like a whole nother. Like,
It could be kind of
Yeah,
subjective.
it could just go downhill quickly, like the
Yeah.
ratings on BGG
Yeah.
for some of the games, where they get rated whether or not they've even played their games or had contact with the
Yeah.
company.
But there could be objective things that you could,
Yeah.
you know, like especially like this company has fulfilled projects. There is a good track record, things like that.
I think they do have some. Well, I guess it's more like backers, right? They have super creators too, right? What's the
super
Kickstarter?
backers. They have super backers.
What are creators who created a bunch of games? Don't they have a
They might have super creators.
label too or something
You're
like
making
that?
up things again.
I've seen it somewhere.
You can usually see on the account how many projects they've created, and you can even look and
Which
see if
ones
they
are
were
successful.
successful.
Yeah.
Um,
So, what are some of the good things that you have seen at Kickstarter because board games come into Kickstarter? What are some of the good things that you've seen come to the market?
Oh, like specific games?
No, like
in general.
In general.
Velcro? No.
Like I was
Space or
one of the
something.
things that I think has really been helpful is the quality of the board games. I think back in 2010 when Ticket to Ride came, or I guess when Ticket to Ride 2008 I think Ticket to Ride came out in 2008.
but that's Days of Wonder, so they already have good.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about that though. Ticket to Ride was a very well polished game that came to the market through distribution. You look at a Ticket to Ride now, compared to some of the high quality games that Kickstarter that people have produced through Kickstarter, Ticket to Ride's good, but it's not amazing.
Right.
Yeah, I would compare it actually more to something like today, Rio Grande. It is a company that's been around for a long time. Some of their games that they've put out recently, we've played, we've enjoyed them, but they're not standout for quality or for design and components and stuff like that.
Yeah,
They're-
especially
it feels
components.
like they're still in whatever 5 years ago was when you compare it to deluxeified versions and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's the ability to have a deluxeified version through having your finger on the pulse of what the market wants that Kickstarter provides. So because companies can see that, our backers really like this, we can have these stretch goals to have this super deluxe version, and that's how you get these massive, Thunderstone Quest boxes that you wouldn't have gotten if they had just gone straight to stores.
Let's talk about that as in general. When you talk about Kickstarter and why people kickstart, you think about the Kickstarter exclusives, you think about the stretch goals, you think about the deluxeified versions, and companies having to figure out, what are they, why are they going to Kickstarter, and what are they offering, and is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
I wasn't paying attention to the question because I was looking at our second camera angle, which is
Okay.
a little off.
Will's,
I'm analyzing. Ben, we need you. Repeat the question
So-
or answer it somebody else.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys, we can ask it again. Basically, for bringing a game to Kickstarter, for a publisher, why is that helpful for them? What are they offering to the consumer that they just couldn't go through distribution? One of the things is a deluxeified version, stretch goals, which Ryan mentioned, and then Kickstarter exclusive. And that can be, all three of those things could be a good thing or a bad thing. Why could they be on either side?
Well, I think people definitely have different opinions about. You have some people who love stretch goals and won't back unless there's stretch goals, and then in the same thread on Facebook, someone will be like, I won't back anything that has stretch goals or exclusives. So I don't know that there, in general, is a consensus on what the best thing is. And we even have some companies who exclusively have sold through Kickstarter.
Well, there's a good example. Peter said Seventh Continent was a Kickstarter only through Serious Pulp. So were you gonna say something, Ryan?
Those Kickstarter exclusives are really a two-edged sword, because I think it's a real draw to Kickstarter, but I also really hate having to go to Kickstarter to get something, because I am that completionist. And what was that? Is the Star Trek episode, I think, of The Toys That Made Us?
Oh.
The one company totally shot themselves because they made something super exclusive, and all the completionists like me were like, oh, well, I'm not even going to buy this anymore, because if I can't have everything, why bother? Yeah.
I do think it's an interesting thing that there will be games, unless they end up somewhere like on the Game Steward, that they don't end up going into distribution at all, and they're only on Kickstarter. And if you missed it, there's a good chance that you may never get that game.
I think the one downside, I'm probably jumping lanes because I only half was paying attention again.
Willis, come into the lane here.
Yeah, but the new camera angle looks amazing.
Thank you. Look at that. I think one of the downsides to Kickstarter is that because there's so much hype and because there's so much new stuff coming out all the time, there's a chance that you totally overlook some of those classics, which kind of ties in with what you're saying. Like, some really good games may only get produced 1,000 times, or 1,000 copies of the game, and it could be amazing if they had marketed it a little bit different or whatever. And I guess that's always true, but because it's always like this new reach for whatever the new thing is, I think we have a little bit less appreciation for like really solid games, and it'll be really interesting in 15 years or whatever. Like, will anything have staying power? What will be the new classics?
Well,
15 years from now.
That's good. Peter says the limited time or slightly different exclusives aren't too bad. Along with that, Peter, I think when a company, I think like Tasty Minstrel's done this, they offer two different versions, like a retail version and a deluxe version in the Kickstarter themselves. That way, I think they have that a little bit of exclusivity in some way, but then when it actually gets to retail, I think it helps them. So they have those two different versions that someone could get a very nice version on Kickstarter, but someone could still get the game
that they can afford, and that because they're not a collector, they're just wanting to play a fun game.
And going back to your thing, Will, I think there's just the plethora of board games is good and bad, because in a good way, all those board games coming out is amazing for the board game consumer because there's so much to choose from. But it's bad in two ways in my thoughts. One is there's so much to choose from. You don't know what to choose from. That's why you come to Tantrum House to help you to choose. But number two is there's just a lot more bad games that get funded.
Or maybe mediocre.
There we go. Mediocre is probably
I like to stay positive.
I think Kickstarter does help. While it's easier for an indie publisher to get their game made, like they've had this idea for a long time and they decide to go ahead and try and jump into the industry. The industry does weed out some of those that really shouldn't be made in the first place, which is probably a good thing for the industry.
Ryan, talk about even your experience in the last 5 to 10 years. You were saying that you were buying games on Kickstarter, and then just you seeing Kickstarter itself being, what was the word? Some of the words you were using,
evolving.
Evolving.
Yeah,
saturated.
I feel like it's super saturated. It used to be like such a pleasurable experience for me, like going on Kickstarter, finding this gem that I didn't feel like anybody else had heard about, and like, oh, I'm gonna bring this to game night. Everybody's gonna think this is amazing. And now I'm just like,
that's why we like Ryan.
Now I'm just like, I don't know about any of these games. And like someone was saying, the deluxe versions, they can be super expensive that I just can't afford to put that much into a game. So the games that are worth getting seem like real hefty, and then there are just so many mediocre games. Should I put forth my money on this thing? It looks good, but I've had so many of these that were just really disappointing once I got it, after having to wait so many months for fulfillment. If I could have had that instant gratification and then instant realization that, oh, this was a mistake, then I might not feel so bad. But when I've waited 6 months to get it, and then I'm like, oh, well, all of that build-up anticipation, there's a lot more of a letdown.
It's interesting, I think, our perspective in general, because we've kind of been writing Kickstarter kind of from the beginning. Ryan really did introduce Sarah and I to some Kickstarter games pretty early. Like, I heard about Kickstarter, and then Ryan had a game from Kickstarter, and it was like... And I wonder, people jumping into the hobby now, like, I didn't feel like you could even find these types of games that we're playing in Barnes & Noble or Target and Walmart. Like, it wasn't there. And so to even, like, see, like, he would show us games, and I'm like, I've never seen this in my entire life. And he'd be like, oh, well, I bought it at, Boardwalk, our friendly local game store. And then the next week I'd be like, I've never seen this one either. And he's like, well, I secretly got this one from Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Now, like, as games become more mass market and people see them on the shelves, I'm kind of curious, like, how much of our audience chime in now even uses Kickstarter, or if they just watch our reviews for stuff that they can buy on Amazon.
Or they're from the local game store.
Yeah, or your friend at the local game store. That's even a better place. But I'm saying, like, I think there's probably a specific set of our audience that just buys from Amazon. Like, maybe they don't go to the conventions, and maybe they don't follow Kickstarter at all. Maybe they're just like, oh, here's a cool family-friendly board game that Tantrum House talked about. Google, order, here it comes.
But Peter likes our family reviews.
I like that. Thank you, Peter. And I wonder how many people are as deep, like, into the Kickstarter world in general. Like, does being in the board game hobby equate to being on Kickstarter looking for board games?
Well, one of my points I wrote down for being good is that it brings more gamers into the hobby. Kickstarter does. I think it does in some ways, and they might not stay on Kickstarter, but I think just through the social engagement that Kickstarter has, and through people that come on Kickstarter, they're getting their friends and families involved. I think that just as a general rule, Kickstarter being around 10 years, I think more people have come into the hobby through this medium.
I would agree with that. And sometimes it's probably through channels like Exploding Kittens or something like that, where it's like a super popular thing to get on Kickstarter and get one. But yeah, if that pulls them further into the hobby, that's cool.
Another thing I think Kickstarter has been helpful for, we talked about the first-time creator, is a way to market your game. I think in 2019, it's a lot different than what it used to be 5 years ago, even 5 years ago. It is still a way to market your game, but in today's world, you need to pre-market your game even before you come to Kickstarter, because people are expecting day one success for a 20, 30-day campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was where when we failed our first Kickstarter, that was the immediate recognition. Like, oh, we don't have a following. How are we going to get 100 people who want this game if your mom, my mom, and his mom already have it? How do we build that audience? I thought you were going to talk more on the art side, because I feel like that's been a really critical side too. I feel like there were a lot of Kickstarters 5-10 years ago.
Here's our little paper thing.
Yeah, like the mediocre mock-up, and the even like page art didn't have to be anything.
Sure.
And it was still potentially enough to excite people about it. And now, like, if you don't have animated GIFs and 6 reviews, good luck.
So I think that's more of a consumer-driven thing. Maybe a little bit publisher, but I think consumers are expecting more nowadays.
Yeah, I think as bigger publishers, the CMON, Come On, whichever they want to be called today, TMG, Gray Fox, there are lots of established companies that have been using Kickstarter, and they have more resources and maybe a little bit more capital to put money into marketing and making their page more professional, getting prototypes that are almost the quality of a game. And so when people on Kickstarter see that compared to someone who's scratched something out on paper and made like little cardboard standees, it looks so different. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, because if something is closer to being finished, there's hopefully less risk. I mean, there's still risk anytime, but you have a better idea of what the finished product's going to be than if I just show you my little like chicken scratch idea and say, really, trust me, I have a game here.
And that's one of the opportunities where if it really is a brilliant idea, it still has the potential to shine on Kickstarter. And those people are the ones that, if they do fund, I feel like we've known some of those people who had an okay idea for their first one. A lot of times I think people have this concept, I've heard more than one person say this, that they were kind of testing the waters with their first game. Like they didn't want to release their best game as their first one, so they released like a smaller game to get their feet wet, get some experience, get a successful campaign under their belt, so that they can then come in with their second brilliant idea that they've been working on for years and years.
We have some people commenting about your question about are they getting the game still on Kickstarter or on Amazon? So we see a few comments here that people are still getting on Kickstarter. Anthony says that he's actually gotten games from Amazon and they haven't been in good condition, getting banged up. So maybe the care that a Kickstarter creator has, maybe through the fulfillment company or even through someone like Sarah that personally packages everything
With love.
With extra love.
With extra love. So
TLC.
and then Steph says she buys from her board game store mostly. So I think the distribution model is still a very, very prevalent model in today's world. I think it's going to stay because what board games do is you're creating social interactions, and where people are going, in most cases, the social interaction is going to happen at that board game store.
Yeah, and if a Kickstarter, I mean, say you sell 1,000 games on Kickstarter, if you want to sell more, you're going to have to figure out how to get that into distribution, either selling it yourself, selling it through Amazon, or getting into stores, so there's more life in that game.
We're all laughing about the same thing.
Yes.
Sorry. Apparently my kids just logged in from the other room with their YouTube account. Hey guys.
So
We haven't talked much about our Kickstarter yet.
yeah, we can talk about it. Currently, we're very excited to see just how well it is done, and just a few hours left. So
To piggyback on what you were just saying about the social interaction, like
Yeah.
the board game thing itself is all about playing with other people most of the time. You play solo games, but that interaction, one of my favorite things about this industry is that because we're all about playing games, like the connections that we build are really cool. Like I don't think when we started off playing game nights at our house and it was like me and Ryan and maybe his sister Valerie and whoever, like that was enjoyable, that small knit community of people who enjoy the same types of things. I would never have guessed that it would blossom into like me knowing people all over the country
And all
that
over
I've
the
played
world.
games with. Yeah, all over the world, that's true. That I've played games with and had a good time with and built that network with. I don't know if it was my birthday or I can't remember. Oh, it was actually when my grandmother passed away a couple weeks ago. I was like blown away by how many responses I got from people who I've really only met them like one time in real life at a board game convention, and we played one game together. But they went out of their way to like show support and encouragement. I love that about this hobby, and our Kickstarter is a pretty good example of that because we've had so many publishers and friends and designers say, like, yeah, here, I'm happy to give you guys a promo card. I'd love to support you in that way.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's exciting.
going back to the board game, is it hard to differentiate between it being a good game or a bad game? I think it depends on multiple factors. I think we talked about the campaign page. I think that's one of the reasons that we try to help as Tantrum House. I think that's one of the reasons we try to help show games off that we think are good, that we're going to do videos on. So there's so many games.
Right, and a lot of the videos that we have on Kickstarters, we try to stay pretty objective and not, this is the best thing
Most of
ever.
us. Yes, well,
This
most
is
of us.
terrible. Because really we're just trying to show you what it is. And I hate take that social deduction. But that doesn't mean it's a bad game. There are people who love that. And
There are people who
Weirdos.
There are people. There are people.
weird people. No. But so it's not, I think, my job in a Kickstarter video to tell you whether you're going to like the game, but to hopefully explain it well enough that you can decide, oh, I like those types of mechanics, I don't like those types, that sort of thing.
Yeah, most games, there's going to be a section of the demographics that are really going to love it and others that won't. And so having a game that has some solid mechanics to it and it isn't broken. Sometimes we don't know that until we play the game, and so there's that factor into it. But knowing personally that there will be somebody who will enjoy this, and trying to get the video out to those people is the key.
So I think that's one of the reasons we're trying to raise money, so that we can continue to make a lot of this content. We mentioned the videos, but we have a weekly podcast.
I always find people who have no idea that exists.
Our weekly podcast?
Yeah. Yeah, we do one every Monday.
Yeah. I mean, I think...
And it's called the...
Tantrum House Board Gaming Podcast.
So you can look it up.
You can probably just look up Tantrum House on podcast and find it.
Probably.
.com, there's a button.
That's right. But I think things like that, we have, of course, our the video that I produce on a couple times. I don't even...
Bi-ish weekly. Mostly 2 weeks. Mostly.
Bi-monthly.
Is that what you call it? Bi-monthly? I always get confused.
Or I think bi-weekly also works too, right? I don't know.
Yes, bi-weekly.
It can be either one.
Sorry.
Okay, bi-weekly because it's twice a month.
Every 2 weeks-ish.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
It's every couple weeks.
But on those videos, Kevin kind of compiles everything that we have knowledge of for the most part into one cram-packed video that just highlights everything real quick. So
and that's about, on average, about 30 games that I know is coming in about a 2-week period, which means if I do it twice a month, it's about 60 games in a month. But we know for a matter of fact that many, many more games come out. And the problem is, I think, is people aren't pre-marketing. I think that's one of the things you'll see in the coming years is people will do a lot more social campaigns and marketing campaigns before they even come to Kickstarter, which a lot of the smarter companies are doing. So
there was something you said a second ago that I was going to jump in on.
Other things that Tantrum House does to help the consumers.
That wasn't what I was going to say, but we also have Tantrum Con.
Well, we'll get that in a second.
Oh, okay, hold on. What are the other things we do?
Well, the Facebook group that we have, the Block group. So
we have a Facebook page that's different from the videos that we put out, but it's just event-based, which is pretty cool. Kevin or creators can create an event for their Kickstarter on that page. And the beauty of it is, I didn't even know this existed until Kevin did it, is that I guess there's like a calendar view. What do they call it? Is it called calendar view?
It's called
calendar view. I don't know if it's working properly right now. But the event, but you can still click on events and see all the events.
Okay. But not in the calendar view? Did they get lost?
Yeah.
Come on, Facebook.
I know. Facebook's having problems.
For a week, it was amazing.
We're getting it worked back.
You can see the whole month and know exactly what's going on every day.
And the other thing that we did is, I created a top 10 highest funded Kickstarters, and then Studio 3 and Studio D did our top favorites from Kickstarter. So I think
and what we're anticipating this year.
That's right. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things that we are doing to help the consumers on that side. So going back to Tantrum Con, Will.
Well, we could ask a question too, because I love getting people's feedback. Like, if there are additional resources that you'd love to know about Kickstarters that are coming, or like, we've tried to rack our brains on this to figure out like what would be the most valuable tool that somebody could find in order to know what to back. So if we need to just start like a ranking system, or I think Ryan's talked about.
Yeah, I've got something that I'm working on. It's still got a ways to go. Yeah.
Percolating.
Yeah, I've made some big breakthroughs, but yeah, we'll get to that.
Oh, secret.
So we've got some more people coming in. Netters Plays, welcome. We're so glad that people are joining, and maybe it's the title that's really bringing people in.
Good job on that clickbait title.
The fact that we are really discussing whether it's good or bad. So
we definitely are. Should we get back to that?
Yeah. Yeah, I know a few people, it's come up a few times, and we really haven't addressed it, but they're talking about companies and their commitment to the backers, consumers, and there are companies that have used Kickstarter that have broken promises, that they have not been faithful to bring what they said, and sometimes it's an outright scam, sometimes someone was in over their head and they just didn't do the numbers, they didn't run the numbers right, they didn't have enough margins, they don't have that business sense. Because running a Kickstarter is so much more than having an idea for a game or having good art. There's that whole process of production and fulfillment. And right now there isn't a whole lot of protections for consumers when someone doesn't deliver.
And I think that's why people talk about the bubble bursting. And we've heard about this bubble. Is there a bubble? Is it a big bubble or the little bubbles? we can talk about that for just a second, because being good or bad, a bubble could help or hurt an industry. So
yeah. And I'll say that the companies that have not fulfilled, you said that the 2,000 some games in 2018.
Yep.
It is a very small percentage that don't fulfill, but there have been some big ones.
I feel bad for the people who go into it really passionate about producing something because they did have an idea that they're really excited about, and then I've seen some cases where they just saw such incredible success that they hadn't planned to be that successful, and then it's like, oh, how do I fulfill that? I have a bunch of money, but I didn't anticipate this quantity, things like that. Yeah. You're saying the business savvy is a key there. Because the barrier is low, it is easier to get in. I will say that, and this is not based on any actual knowledge.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, everyone wait. Just take
We don't know what he's about to say.
We don't know what he's about to say.
This does not necessarily reflect the views of, I don't, you just mentioned it a little bit a second ago, I don't think there's any more risk in backing a Kickstarter, even for like $99, than there is in plenty of other things that we do in other industries and we don't freak out about. Like, there are plenty of things that I've bought where I thought this product was going to be really great, and then I got it and it just doesn't do what I thought it was going to do.
But at least you got the product. In some cases, you're not getting anything, so you're basically getting...
That is worse.
You're getting nothing.
There have been a few items I've purchased where I was like, I completely wasted my money and this is going in the trash. Right. So I got it.
At least you got something.
Yeah, I was talking more about the Kickstarters that fund and then people get them and like it's much cheaper material than they thought it was going to be.
No, I agree with that.
Didn't finish the art on some piece or something.
That's definitely possible.
You're going to run into risk anywhere. I feel like, and I'm probably just being naive, but I feel like the risk of backing a board game with the fear that you're going to lose all your money on it is a pretty low risk in general.
Yeah.
Something I was just thinking about board games on Kickstarter as compared to the games that just come to retail is on Kickstarter they have the timeline of what they think is going to happen, and if things mess up, and sometimes it's not even the creator's fault, it could be other people along the line, everyone knows that you didn't miss your mark. But if a publisher is planning to bring a game to Gen Con, but they haven't announced it yet, and something goes terribly wrong, they just don't bring the game.
Right,
we never hear about all the back-end problems.
And it happens a lot.
It does. And sometimes
we hear about it.
and sometimes people have announced, we're going to bring this game to Gen Con. Everyone's really excited about it. The shipment doesn't come. Something went wrong.
Yep.
And then people are disappointed. But I think that does happen more than we think. It's just on Kickstarter, people see it.
Well, and
now
because it's such a social platform, like
they
everybody's
can
social, and they're personally invested, Melissa, because they have spent their own money.
They've already paid for it.
Already paid. Whereas at Gen Con, maybe they paid to come to Gen Con, but they haven't paid to buy that game yet.
Right.
So. Unless pre-orders would hopefully
They'll
have enough happen.
And the danger is Kickstarter is not a storefront, but consumers will treat Kickstarter as if it is a storefront, and then they get disappointed. And then there's some companies that are also treating Kickstarter as if it's just a pre-order storefront.
Yeah.
But that is not how Kickstarter was originally designed.
It is not, but I think personally, this is my personal opinion, so you are welcome to disagree with me. I don't think people realize the capital needed to produce some of these games, especially the massive deluxeified with a billion minis. That's a lot. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes. Yep.
That normally what would happen is they would have to have investors, which will take some of the profit. They'll have to have loans out.
And interest there.
And then there's interest loss. So, and then they have to gauge the market correctly. And we know that doesn't happen. I mean, look at Wingspan and The Godfather. Those were two games that were
on the extremes.
Very extremely miscalculated.
Sure.
On both ends.
Yes,
both ends. And so I personally, I used to not like that established companies were using Kickstarter.
Okay.
But now that I've gotten more on the back end of the industry and learned more about what goes into the publishing side and manufacturing side, that it doesn't bother me anymore that it has evolved to this, because Kickstarter gets a big percentage of it.
Yep.
So instead of giving that percentage to a bank or to an investor. It is going to a company that is bringing more
Getting
people
really rich. Oh, I mean.
well, but they're bringing people to the industry, from the industry to one place where those
Creating
people
that
are
marketplace.
exposed to all the little games that are out there from indie publishers.
Yeah.
And Kickstarter is actually participating, recognizing that they're such a big part of the gaming industry. They were at PAX. You guys were
Yeah,
saying.
they had a booth at PAX Unplugged.
And apparently it was a pretty amazing booth. What was it, like a couch factory?
Yeah, pretty much. They had like little mini living rooms set
Yeah.
up in sections where you could sit and play a game with your friends and like
Yeah.
you're at home.
That sounds really cool.
I just checked our Kickstarter page, and I wanted to thank Donna for sharing this link to our YouTube channel on our Kickstarter page, because someone was asking, how do they get to see this live video? So,
Oh, cool.
thank you, Donna. I appreciate
Good
that.
job.
Um,
And hello to Germany as well. See some
Yeah,
of the
we have people
chiming in.
from around the world watching. That's cool.
I think people were interested in your bubble conversation.
Yeah, we
Or-
can
Yeah.
continue.
or-
So I think about that a little bit because people refer to the bubble and maybe even compare it to other industries like the comic book industry, the video game industry. I try to think about that and compare it in my mind. How is the board game industry similar to those industries, and how is it different? I think there's many different ways you could pair off and
Dissect
branch
it.
off, but in one way, it's board game is an entertainment, right? It's an entertainment industry, and when you think about that, there could be a bubble in some aspects. In another aspect, I think board gaming as a whole is very small compared to comic books was at one time, and video games still is. And if someone says a video game had a bubble, it probably did, but look how well video games are still doing.
Right. They're
As
not
a-
going anywhere. Like
Right.
nobody's. It is funny to me that people ask like, is the board game revolution like will it come to an end? Why is it so popular? I think any form of entertainment that establishes itself as something that can bring quality to the market over any period of time is going to have staying power.
Right.
Like even if the bubble collapsed a little in the video games, like nobody's going to not play video games on their smartphones and everything else for the rest of their life. As long as there are people and tables, I think there'll be board games.
Yeah, and I think we might see a stabilization,
Sure.
maybe, not the like, I'm buying 100 games this year sort of thing. And I think we've even seen it so far this year on Kickstarter. A lot of decent games that
looked
probably
like they
would
were
have
gonna-
funded and overfunded a year ago or 2 years ago are either just barely funding or not funding because there's just so much on Kickstarter. There's so many options that the cream probably will rise to the top, and it may even like buoy it where
Yeah.
this is the level of acceptability now, whereas in the
Yeah.
past it may have been here. And
And it's kind of funny when you compare it to other industries like comic book, video games, even books, like reading. Like, how many books are published a
Every
year,
year.
right? That I have no idea, and people may not read, or, they read or even review, and you have reviewers out there that can't review all the books. The same thing goes with us. There's no way we can review all the games. You think about something like that, and you're like, yeah, there's just so many games that come out, but this is a social game. This is board gaming is social.
Experience, yeah.
It's a social experience, whereas comic books, they're not really that social. I mean, you're usually just reading them. Video games, as a general rule, are more of a solo experience, except you have, like Nintendo has the Switch now, and there is a sub-genre in video games where it is social. But as a general rule,
I would
Right.
disagree.
I think
I
it's
would say-
want
Online?
the single player video
It's
games,
flipped
and
recently.
they're all multiplayer because
Online.
that is where the money is getting these people
To-
to
Pay for
do
subscriptions
microtransactions
on the solo game,
in
No.
multiplayer.
oh, multiplayer.
Yeah.
Right, but
so loot shooters and all
Kevin
that.
doesn't
There's
play
been
video
all
games,
sorts of
so he-
controversies about it, and luckily, board games are kind of immune to that sort of controversy for the time being. But
So obviously we need to invent a board game with microtransactions, right?
yeah.
There we go.
Well, that's where the money is.
Kickstart that puppy for us.
Well, and I think like one of the biggest video game creators is Electronic Arts, and this is a rabbit trail, but they've seen so much flack from their desire to make it multiplayer and get compensation through the microtransactions
That's
that
funny.
they've actually rebounded back, and it was like a huge deal that they just announced the Star Wars single player game
Okay.
in November, and everybody's really excited because they're like, could EA not be evil? I don't know,
Okay.
but let's find out.
But board gaming is a social interaction. Now, as a general rule, but there are board games that are
Solo. for
Solo
sure.
experiences. There are games that are made specifically for solo, and then there are board games on Kickstarter that were not made for solo, but now were made for solo. And that's just
Yeah.
another
Great
conversation.
Games that shouldn't be made solo.
Yeah, I guess trying to reach more of the market because there is a strong contingent of people who either don't have other people to play with or just prefer
How
the
many of
solo
you
puzzle.
Play
type of
solo
aspect.
games. That's the question.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
play solo games because we play a game that's meant for 2 people, and then we had to like learn it, and so we had to play it by ourselves.
Yeah.
But rarely do we, or do
Well, I have to say, I play solo, but I play 2 or 3 players at once when I'm
There you
sometimes
go.
learning a game. I wouldn't consider that solo play though.
It's pretty close.
It's an
A
exception.
different
She's playing
definition.
games that aren't intended for solo play.
Yeah,
but playing
to
them
learn
solo,
them, yeah.
Which is, I mean, 1-player chess and things like that are things that people do all the time. So
This is more of a broader umbrella I sort of brought up underneath this Kickstarter being good or bad because we're talking about the board game industry. But I think it was,
everywhere.
no,
but
I think it fits. I think it fit well in the conversation. So.
Thank you for verifying our rabbit trails.
Where the rabbit trails came from.
So-
Kevin and Ryan's minds.
But Netters Play, I understand comics are social. I enjoy talking about them to different people, especially in today's world. We enjoy like the different Marvel series
fruit of
and
them.
DC and things and many other genres that I don't even know about. So. Any other things? Any other questions that you guys have about Kickstarter? Any questions about our Kickstarter campaign? Any questions that you have outside of our Kickstarter campaign? You just want to know what's Melissa's favorite color? You probably already know that. It's red.
Well, that's my favorite color to play with.
Yeah.
What?
My favorite color is actually purple.
That's right.
But
But to play with, it's red.
Solo board gaming is highly anticipated. Currently at
Appreciated.
play. Oh, appreciated. I can't read.
Appreciated.
Yeah, Space Corp sounds cool.
so does it count if I like multiplayer solo games?
Yeah, like
where
Is that
you're
what
not.
we're
well, like
saying?
Yeah.
Tiny Towns is a multiplayer solo game.
Oh, games where you don't have to interact with other players.
Correct.
Even though you sit at the table with them and play it. Now, Tiny Towns is less solo. Like you were definitely impacting.
Because you're picking, yeah.
Well, the town hall rules.
Oh, gotcha.
It's definitely solitaire. So.
Yeah, Melissa definitely appreciates those games. I like to be
Let
able
me
to...
play my puzzle and don't mess with me.
Well, actually, what did we just play yesterday that I hated because you...
It was Pandora.
Oh, yeah, it's a Kickstarter prototype. And it's...
That's a public-
That's a published game.
Oh, published.
Yeah.
It's a published game.
And
Go to Kickstarter.
she was just every turn ruining my turn.
Oh, good job, Sarah.
Great game. I hated it. Really great game.
You hated playing with me. I
I
think that
did.
was the key to that one.
Peter does the multiplayer solo thing when he's trying to learn a game like Rado does. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
I wonder how many. I think a lot of people probably do that because you kind of have to learn it before you go play with everybody else. Even our how to play videos, which we don't do, play through videos, don't teach you everything. So
Right.
you're gonna have to read it, try it out before you inflict pain on your guests.
Yeah,
There-
someone said they do you have
Go ahead.
they decreased the number of projects they backed. They have projects I backed when the creator could not fulfill a project and they refunded. But I think that's true. I think a lot of people may not back as many projects, but I think more people are coming into the hobby. So I think that will make up for it in some ways.
So it may be more spread
Yeah.
than deep.
Right. I think you won't see one person backing 100 projects, but you might see 100 people backing one project. So.
And I think you were kind of saying that like you still look to Kickstarter for really good games, and you probably are willing to spend a little bit more on Kickstarter now than you were before, because you know that's how you get the deluxeified stuff.
Yeah.
Is that what you're gonna say, Ryan?
No, I was going to say, someone asked about Tantrum Con, so I have to mention it.
Oh.
Will it always be in winter? And I think the answer to that is, for the time being, we're trying not to conflict too much with other cons because we want Tantrum Con to be as successful and just awesome as possible.
And we don't want to
It's-
step on other
it's
people's toes.
also,
There's a
uh,
lot of conventions in our region
Yeah.
that happen in the spring. Fortunately, Greenville, even in February,
So I
is a
was
very
say,
nice place.
I would say it's nice to
It
come
was
to the
calm.
south and avoid the winter for a few days up north.
I think it was like 60 degrees.
Yeah,
It
it
was
was
like-
it was nice enough to play games outside. at Tantrum
Yeah,
House
and
last
we
year.
don't have our exact dates yet, but hopefully that's coming soon. But we are not planning to do it on President's Day weekend.
We're
Or
hoping.
the same week as New York Toy Fair. So.
I think it's
Yeah.
January 31st through February 2nd.
The
Wow,
unofficial.
it's a whole month of
January 31st through
oh,
February
oh.
2nd. 3 days.
I heard that as like the whole
the
month of
other way
January.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's another couple good points that Kay Wolf brought up. Kickstarter can be good or bad for in some ways because it's an addiction. It could be an addiction to some people, and it's good in some ways because it's the cold of the new. I mean, it's the new stuff that's coming out, so maybe you're looking for some new things. So.
Well, that's usually used as a negative term.
I think cold of the new is-
Kevin likes addiction.
I like that.
I like cults.
Bye, Niners Plays. Thanks for joining.
I do think that there is something weird about that, and I don't know if there's like some psychological title for it or not, but I do find that once people discover that you can buy board games on Kickstarter, like it's not like they just buy one and then they're like, yeah, I'm done, it was fun, good times. Like a lot of people suddenly like they're like checking it every month to see what the new stuff is, and they're buying
Every
stuff
month,
pretty
you
regular.
mean like every couple days?
I was trying not to go for the
Couple
hardcore
hours.
addicts, but there is something weird about it. I don't know. Facebook is just as addicting, but I don't know what other things
I think
are like
some
that.
people might also like the social aspect of the campaigns and unlocking stretch goals. It's kind of like a mini game to be involved in a Kickstarter. How high can we go? What can we unlock? What's this goal? And it's, you know.
Well, and there is a little bit of that high, like when Ryan would show up with a brand new game that nobody had ever heard of. Like that's a cool feeling that comes directly from the Kickstarter uniqueness.
Yeah, and I think part of the attraction is, of course, the communication you get through Kickstarter, because the creators are encouraged to communicate more often than they would if they weren't on Kickstarter. So there are some games from major publishers that are not on Kickstarter that were announced months ago that I check every week and still no word, no progress, no date when it's coming. Yeah. But on Kickstarter, at least, you are getting updates and you're like, oh, you know, something is happening.
Or should be happening,
Yeah.
or should be getting updates.
There's usually at least the update where they apologize that stuff's behind schedule.
Yeah.
Well, we would appreciate anyone that would love to come. We would love for you to come to TantrumCon. Peter, Steph, you will have a wonderful time. We had a wonderful time last year.
Kevin guarantees it.
Yes.
We really would, and you guys coming makes it all the more
Yeah.
enjoyable for us. I think there is a little bit of addiction to hosting a con too, where we got done with that experience and we were like, oh yeah, we should definitely do this.
Sleep for a few days first and then do it
Yes.
again.
Recover your sanity and then start planning.
Well, we should probably wrap this up.
I think we're approaching an hour, so we should just go
Yeah.
2 more minutes, and then we'll have done our first ever Tantrum Talk that goes an hour.
Okay, so quick, we need to say thank you to our sponsor for Tantrum Talks. That's Academy Games. Check out their game Tutor. They have a couple games coming in the works that are coming to Kickstarter, since we're talking about Kickstarter. I'm not allowed to say the name of them, but I've heard about one. I think that's going to be Kickstarted this summer from Academy Games. And we've really enjoyed Tutor, so that was a fun game. So you can check that out. We have a review of it. Do we have a playthrough?
We
of
have
it?
a playthrough.
Wow,
Yes.
we have a playthrough video too. So, any other last comments here?
Mike, see you at TantrumCon. Anybody else? You guys should come.
Kickstarter can be viewed as gambling, hoping that they'll get there.
But then it's really high stakes to rewards things.
That's
so,
right.
yeah.
That's right. Very good. Very cool.
Gambling and addiction. So Kickstarter, as you can tell, we've discovered and determined that it's good for you.
Thank you. And number 2, thank you for all your support on our Kickstarter campaign. We've been very thankful for all the people that have supported us so far, and hopefully we'll go out here in the next few hours and do really well. So
Yeah, it's been a fantastic ride for the last 27 or 5 days or whatever
20
campaign
days.
was. 20 days. It seemed longer. No, it didn't. It seems like a lot of fun. We've loved all the communication. Props to Kevin for replying to all those comments on
And
YouTube.
Sarah's help, too.
And Sarah on Kickstarter. We're looking forward to capping that off and then starting to send out really cool rewards to you guys really soon.
yeah. Thank you all.
I think we're calling it bye. We're going to wait for Ryan to push the button. Bye! See ya.
And then we'll just keep smiling.
Well, they can still hear us.
Okay.
Sweet. Oh, cool. It only covers half of our faces. Look, Ryan, lean to the right. Kevin, lean to the left.
Oh, there it is.
Extra waves.
Okay. This is a really cool game if you see this graphic.
I went too far.
Lean back in. It's hard to know.
I can't tell.